What's going on, everybody? Welcome, welcome, welcome. We have the 2025 PGA Championship. We are back. We had a very, very nice Masters. Hopefully, that everybody else benefited from it as well. We took down a nice GPP for 20K. Been playing a little bit here and there. A little bit busy with work, but we're going to get right into it here. Give out some picks. I'm going to go over a few of my outrights. I'm on Bright. Spoiler alert: I'm on Bryson, like everybody else is. Got him at what I thought was not a great number, but now seeing what the number is, pretty happy with it. So yeah, so let's kind of get into it. So we're playing at Oakmont Country Club, right? Um, Really widely regarded as like the gold standard for championship golf, right? Extremely fast greens. Now I know it's rained a little bit so far in the beginning of the week, but these greens do have the same sub-air system like the Masters has. They put those in ahead of the renovation that they did, that Gil Hanse did in 2023. Now, it's not the same as Augusta, as Augusta has that sub-air in the fairways as well. What that means is that if we do get a little bit more rain, right, ball's going to kind of stay in the fairway, and it may make the those roll-offs into the rough, which is going to be probably playing anywhere, I've read several places, about 5 to 6 inches. It's going to make it less of a factor, right? But it looks like it's drying out a little bit. Weather shouldn't be too much of a factor, right? I don't see any like crazy weather splits. Certainly nothing that is going to lead me to, make lineups to one way or another, right? I just don't think that is really what we need. Thursday looks pretty good. Wind gusts, somewhere could get a little high, right? But pretty even throughout the day. Thursday, or I'm sorry, Friday, it looks like in the afternoon, like late afternoon, 4 to like 6 p.m. local time, the gusts could kind of pop up there a little bit. So if you really were wanting to play a stack, and you wanted to get the guys going out first thing in the morning on Friday, I think that's the way I would probably go. But again, not really necessary, right? Incredible greens, very severe sloping, especially holes 1, 3, 10, and 12. They pitch away from the fairway, making approach shots really, really hard, right? You're going to have to be smart. If your irons are off this week, I bet on Bryson. If the irons that he was hitting at Augusta show up here, it's going to be very difficult for him to compete, right? It's just not going to be very easy. Like I said, really going to need precise approach shots. It's why people are gravitating more to the bombers, right? They got the bomb and gouge kind of situation, right? Where you're going to have a shorter shot in, but this is going to be a great course. Like I said, redone in 2023 by Gil Hanse and Jimmy Wagner. I think they did a really good job. They expanded the greens. They added one new hole location per green through the green expansion. So they we could see some. We're definitely going to see some hole locations we haven't seen before at previous PGA championships held at Oakmont. A lot of bunkers, right? 175, very, very penal. You got the Church Pew bunker on 3 and 4. Just, a lot of grass ridges, right? Really, really cool from a visual standpoint, but really not fun if you get in between some of those. Rough, like I said, it looks to be very thick and pretty dense. Obviously, the rain earlier this week, the grass is going to grow. It's going to be nice and thick. Been pretty rainy, in that part of the world over the winter this year. So everything is going to be very, very thick, right? 5 to 6 inches is everything that I've seen. You've seen the videos on YouTube, guys, just, dropping a ball and then, it's like, okay, where the hell did I see it? I was watching the Bob Does Sports guys went and played, and it's funny because they're all similar handicaps to me and my friends and all of us out there, and they had a really tough time with it, right? Fairways are narrow. They demand good off the tee play. If you're losing it off the tee, it's going to be tough, right? No water hazards, which is great. But again, very penal bunkers, thick rough, the whole 9 yards, right? Um, the 23 renovation actually lengthened the course to 7,300 yards. Um, so it's going to be a lot harder than when they held the PGA Championship here in 2016, in my opinion, right? You know, you got 3, 4, 10, and 12 are really the signature holes of the golf course, right? Um, yeah, like I said, greens are going to be very, very fast. Estimated that they'll probably play, 15 on the stimp meter. It's going to be tough, right? You're going to have to putt. Um, it's going to be quite the equalizer. If you can't find the putter at all, lag putting going to be very, very important. It's one of the reasons why I think Scotty is actually, traditionally, not a great putter. Actually has been a lot better over the last 24 rounds, according to my model here. He's ranked 15th in the model that I ran. He's gaining about a half a stroke around right now putting, which traditionally, you know, really hasn't been it. He also doesn't have the length that some of these other guys have, right? So, he doesn't have the length of a Bryson, Rory, JT, right? But I still think he's in play for me this week, coming off some good form. But let's get into it. So I started my model, right? I'm using Fantasy National. The metrics that I have used were strokes gained off the tee, strokes gained approach, strokes gained around the green, strokes gained ball striking, opportunities gained, strokes gained tee to green, bogey avoidance, which I weighted fairly low, strokes gained putting, which I think is going to be paramount this week, and Draftkings points, which, we're playing on Draftkings. So, I weighted that a little bit lower as well. But that's kind of what I used to come up with my model, right? So as the model pops up, we've got Scotty, Bryson, Rory, JT, the top four in the model. No surprise there. The biggest concern with JT has been his off the tee game. He's losing, strokes per round over the last 24 round. Not a lot, 0.06. So, not extremely bad, but he's gaining a ton of opportunities, which weights him high in the model. His DK scoring has always been very good, and he's pretty even across the board everywhere else. So really like how he rates out. Sepp coming in at number 5 in the model. Obviously, with the win, going to be inflated. His around the green game is atrocious, but his ball striking has been really nice lately. A lot of opportunities. Number 6 in the model, strokes gained ball striking. So, gaining about, 1.3 strokes in the ball striking metric over the last 24 rounds. So that's kind of what I'm looking at as well. We got Corey Connors, Shane Lowry, Morikawa, Patrick Reed, Daniel Berger popping up there. Bud Cauley. Sometimes, you can't play everything by the model, right? You just can't. You get some weird guys. We got Bud Cauley popping up here last 24 rounds. I mean, not great off the tee. His bogey avoidance isn't great, but a pretty good putter and a pretty good ball striker, right? His approach game is good too. So that's kind of probably why it's lifting him up a little bit. We have Fleetwood, Hatton, Brooks, Spieth. I have an outright bet on Spieth. I don't know that he can win here, but I like the number that I got on him. Matthew McCarty, Russell Henley, Keegan Bradley, Eric Cole, Cam Smith, Neiman, Rye, Novak, Siwoo Kim, and Lee Hodges round out the top 25 in the model. Again, the model's not gospel. It's a starting point for me. I take a look at some of these other guys that I like. For example, I like JJ Spawn as a cheaper play this week. He's, number 31 in the model. I like EVR for the price, Sung Jae for the price. Ludwig hasn't been playing great, but his ownership, we'll get to that. I like him as well. Some other guys down here. I think Bhatia is worth a dart throw here. His metrics have been not very good, though. The biggest issue with Bhatia has been his bogey avoidance. Makes a lot of bogeys. But again, this week, a lot of people are going to make a lot of bogeys. So, can he avoid the triples, the consistent doubles? If he can, I think he can contend. I don't have an outright on him, but he's a guy that I really do like. If you're looking for a cheap bomber, it's Nicholas Norgard Moeller, number two in the model in strokes gained off the tee. He's gaining, um, just about a stroke around off the tee, which is pretty crazy, right? Um, so he's 5,400. They brought the 5,000 range back. Pretty interesting stuff this week, I think. When you really start to think about it, when you bring that 5,000 range back, you just have to hope that those guys make the cut. And it's really interesting when you look at the pricing and you look at the ownership, and we'll get to that in a little bit. Normally, when you want to play some of these bigger guys up top, like Scotty and stuff like that, then you have to go down and mix in some of the high sixes and sevens. This week, it seems that more people are gravitating down into this 5,000 range than the low sixes and jamming in a couple of the guys up top, which I think is a fine strategy. But what it's doing is it's dropping a lot of the ownership in the guys in the sevens where people would normally play them, right? So we'll pop over the ownership here and take a look at it right now. Highest owned, Rory and Bryson are tied. Then you got JT. Then you got Scotty right now at only 16%. I know he's the most expensive guy in the field, but if you're telling me that you're going to give me Scotty at 16% when we know what he was and the Masters and what he is usually, I think that if he hovers in that 16 to 20% range, I'm going to have a fair amount of Scotty. I'll probably have 25% of Scotty. And hopefully he stays in that range. Keith Mitchell is going to be the popular, like, cheap guy. Obviously, we just saw him play great in the first couple rounds. I'm not going to be on Keith Mitchell this week, full disclosure. Um, then you got Berger, Cantlay in the 13%. Patrick Reed, Tommy Fleetwood, Sepp Straka, Bud Cauley, there he is. Some other people, are gravitating toward Bud, and Keegan Bradley are in that like 10% range, right? But then you take a look, right? Let's sort by salary here. Okay. You've got this range in the nine, like 9,800 at Victor down to Hatton are all basically around 7 to 11%, right? I think it would be pretty interesting if you could put together a build that is fairly balanced in the nines and the eights. Because if you drop down to the eights here, the high eights, nobody's playing these guys, right? You got Hatton, Henley, Jason Day, Will Zalatoris, Minwoo Lee, who I actually like quite a bit this week at 5%. Wyndham Clark, right, who can get really, really hot with the putter, like we saw him win the US Open at LA Country Club, right? Just got scorching hot with the putter. He can do that, right? Again, didn't pop up in the guy as a guy I liked in the model, but again, that's not the gospel. It's a balance, right? Justin Rose, who's been playing great golf this year. Obviously, we saw him in the playoff at the Masters at 8,000, only garnering about 5% ownership. So super interesting. Mav McNeely is a guy that I like this week. Sahith Theegala, he did withdraw. So if you were planning on playing Sahith, or Spieth Light, as people like to call him, get him out of your lineups. He's not going to be playing this week. Siwoo, I think, is a nice play this week. Good ball striker. His putting, he just got to get hot. Sam Burns, I think, is an interesting play. His form has not been very good, right? Matthew Fitzpatrick, interesting. I heard a few people talk about Matt. I just don't think that he has the length to contend here, right? You're going to have to be a decent off the tee, and he just is not. But like if you look at some of these guys in this like sevens range that normally get a lot of ownership in the majors because people are trying to play Scotty and the guy and Bryson and the guys at the top, it's not happening this week, right? The highest owned guy in the sevens is Keegan Bradley at 10%. Everybody else outside of Berger at 7,900, everybody else, I guess it's Berger at 7,900 at 13, Keegan at 10. Everybody else is single digit ownership. So Sergio, Cameron Young, Davis Thompson, I think is interesting here. Bobby Mack. Dustin Johnson. I don't know if I can click Dustin this week, right? Sergio Garcia has been playing some pretty good golf this year. Ricky, not for me this week, probably. I know people are going to say, he's won PGA Championship before. It's been a while. I don't care that it was here. Course has been redesigned. It's a little bit different. It's going to be playing very, very hard, right? Dustin Johnson, like I said, you know, won in 2016, um, 4 under. I don't know. Dustin's a guy that like he might make it into two of my lineups, right? I'm playing 11 lineups this week, so like one or two is probably going to be enough for me. And then you have this very, very wide range, right? Like I said, Keith Mitchell's garnering ownership in the low sixes here. Um, Michael Kim has a back injury. I was kind of riding Michael Kim quite a bit this year, but I just coming off that injury, I'm not a huge fan. Some people are going to click Gary Woodland here down here in the 5,800 range. I think that that's fine, right? But that's really not going to be maybe for me so much. I like EVR. I like Eric Cole. Um, Lee Hodges popped up in the model. In that number 25. I don't know that I'm clicking him. There's Nicholas Norgard Muller. He is down at 5,400, garnering about 6 to 8% ownership, right? And that's really because he's a bomber, right? People are just going to say, hey, we're just going to bet on his ability to really bomb the ball. I don't have a whole lot of other people. There is one Euro player that, where is he at here? It's a Spanish guy, Eugenio Lopez Chacara. Pat talked about him on his show a little bit. He's got some good form on the DP World Tour. Hits the ball, a decent amount. I don't know, about 0.7% ownership. I think he might be a fun kind of dart play. I always like to try and find one of these in here. I am not playing Michael Block. No, thank you. Uh, let's see. Let's see if he's even listed on here. Michael Block. Where is he? I don't even see him in here. I know he's in the field. Oh, there he is. 5,500. Nobody else is playing Michael Block either, as they should not. This is not a course where I think that his skill set doesn't play on the tour regularly. Obviously, a great golfer, qualified again, but just really not for me, right? Um, so if you sort again here, let's go by ownership up at the top, or let's go by salary here. Like I said, Ludwig is that top guy who's going to be, under 10%, looks about 9% owned. Obviously has not been playing great. I don't think John Rahm's going to be a click for me. I think Brooks is interesting, 9,700. I would probably play Neiman for, $100 less at the same ownership, essentially. Both about 8%. I think Hideki is very interesting here. Obviously not a ton of length, but ball striking really, really good, right? Um, I think that Hatton is an interesting guy for me. I can't do Jason Day. Nobody else can either, right? I really find it that Corey Connors is obviously a great ball striker, great driver of the ball. 14%, I don't know. We'll see what happens here. So I'm going to generate a few lineups here and just see what out of the guys that I have clicked and starred, um, what they have. I'm going to generate 11 lineups and just see what it kind of gives me here. Even weight across. Let's go. So there's some interesting builds that get auto generated out of here, right? One, you got like a Scotty, Reed, Berger, Kim, Batia, Lee Hodges. Like, I can't do Lee Hodges. Like, sorry. Like, you can auto click and get him out of there, right? You can go to let's see, we go to Nicholas Norgard Muller and leave $200 on the table, right? Uh, yeah, the Lee Hodges thing, I just can't get to, right? I would much rather play some of these other guys. Um, I really think this one is interesting over here. Leaves $1,000 on the table. That's a little bit more than I like to leave on the table, but it gets back to what we're talking about with a lot of the guys in the nines. So we go JT, Neiman, Matsuyama, Connors, Cauley, and Lee Hodges, right? So there's again another Lee Hodges one where, we got $1,000 left on the table. We can move up from Lee Hodges right there. So I'm gonna just plug it into, of course, I get logged out of DraftKings as I'm talking this. And I just want to see who else I can plug in there to get away from Lee Hodges. All right. Technical difficulties, logging back in. All right, let's see here. All right, so we've got JT, 9,900. Then we've got Neiman. Then we've got Matsuyama, 9,400. Corey Connors, again, going to probably, him and JT are going to be our highest owned guys out of the group here. Bud Cauley. All right, we got 6,600 left. Okay, there's a lot of guys who we could get to in here. You could play one of the Højgaard twins. If that tickles your fancy, you can play Hui. I talked earlier. I think I like JJ Spawn a little bit this week, so I'm going to plug him in there. Leaves $200 on the table. That's a lineup that I'm going to be looking to go. Again, I mostly hand build all my lineups, and I might tinker around with that one a little bit more, but I like just seeing what the lineup generator spits out at me, right? It's one of those things where you just see what the computer gives you. Again, just like the model, it's not the gospel, right? But it just gives you some interesting ideas. Like you got a Bryson, JT, Reed, Dustin Johnson, and then you've got a couple guys in the sixes you can go to there. I like that. Morikawa, Spieth. I'm not the biggest fan of Morikawa this week, but could certainly get there, right? I really like that JT, Neiman, Matsuyama, Connors, Cauley, and then you pick your flavor of the 6,600 and down. I think that that's a really interesting lineup. I think that it's also really interesting when you take a look at some of the builds where you go up, you try and force some of these guys in the very high end up there, right? So I was looking at one earlier where it's Scheffler, Lowry, Minwoo Lee, Bhatia, Lopez, Chakara, and then EVR, right? Really interesting, really unique lineup. I think that one's kind of fun. I'm going to see what it kind of gives us here if we try and put Scheffler. I don't think Rory's going back to back and Bryson in together. So here's where you can just see if you want to play both of those guys this week, you totally can, right? You plug both of those guys in there, you're left with about just under $6,300 per player, right? I like EVR this week. He played great, just got absolutely dominated by, a Scotty on fire situation. Play EVR, that pumps us up to 6,400, right? But now you're getting into this guy's. I know Pat talked him about a lot. Dan Burmeister, really long hitter. You got Rico Hui down there. You've got McCarty, who I like. So we plug him in at 63. Now we're in the 65. So you're basically like, if you want to jam two of those guys, if you want Scotty and Bryson, now, if you want to try and go up a little bit, right? I think Xander is a fine play this week. I think his form is really good. Obviously, has won the PGA championship before. If you just take Scotty out and plug in Xander into that lineup that we're talking about right there, starts you off with Bryson, Xander. I've got McCarty and EVR in there. Now we've got 7,900 left for our last two players, right? And your options are just all over the board at that point, right? Go back to the ownership in that range, right? That's 79 to 7, right? You've got two guys, one guy in Keegan Bradley and Daniel Berger in the double-digit ownership range. You can pick whoever you want to in here. So I know we like Siwoo Kim in the model. I like Siwoo Kim a little bit this week. Again, concerned about some of the bogeys. Plug him in there. You've got 8,100, and then you take your pick, right? You've got Berger, Straka, Rose, Patrick Reed, who traditionally plays these very tough courses very well. Nobody really likes him. He's kind of a jackass. Sometimes people accuse him of cheating, right? But 12% owned, you could plug him in there. If you're looking for lower ownership, right? In a much larger field tournament, you could go with Justin Rose. I'm going to put Justin Reed in this lineup, and then I've got Bryson, you know, Schauffele, McCarty, Reed, EVR, Siwoo Kim, right? It's a pretty good looking lineup, I think, right? So those are just some of the things you can kind of do. I think it's pretty interesting, when you play around with that a little bit. Um, Obviously, you would like to try and get Bryson and Scotty in there, or Bryson and Rory, or Scotty and Rory, right? But if you do that, you're going to have your other four golfers in, the low 6,000 range, some guys in the high fives. Now, again, it's doable this week because you are going to have, a higher percentage of regular players make the cut, because you do have the Michael Blocks and the Michael Ketrud and the Brian Bergstall, all these PGA professionals that got into the tournament, right? You've got basically, look at anybody from like, I mean, I would say that you can cross off anybody 5,200 and down, right? So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. That's 27 people, right? Top 70 in ties are going to make the cut. Okay, there's 156 entries. So right there, 156 minus those 27, bottom feeders at the bottom, that's now 129 players, right? And top 70 in ties, right? You figure probably about 100 players of that are going to make the cut. So look, even if you do get a cheap guy through, you need those cheap guys to perform on the weekend, right? Very similar to the Masters, where there's going to be a much higher 6 of 6 percentage this week. Not as high as the Masters, obviously, but there is going to be a higher than regular because of top 70 in ties, where you don't want to just go bottom feeding down there just to get those guys, right? Um, you got to have them be able to score and play over the weekend in order to give yourself to win a GPP. Now, I play in smaller field GPPs, right? So the tournaments, let's talk about contest selection a little bit for a second here. So the tournaments I'm playing in, right, are the $100. I like the $100 single entry, only 1,100 people in it. The Club Twirl is what I won. That's the tournament that I took down at the Masters. $44 per entry, right? Only 2,600 people in it. And then I really like that $55 the up and down, the 50K up and down this week. $55 to enter. You can't put 150 lineups in it, right? It's a max 31. 10K first place, just over 1,000 people. So like those are the types of contests that I like to play in. And one of the biggest reasons why is because obviously we like chasing the millionaire maker and all that good stuff and all that good fun. The problem there is like, if you take a look at the lineup that I won my GPP at the Masters with, the Club Twirl, I think I would have finished like, I don't know, 75th in the millionaire maker for like $130 or something like that. Like it's just crazy. So there's so much disparity. Like you don't have to have the absolute nuts if you are playing these tournaments. I've never been somebody to max enter stuff. I've never been one to do that. I like that strategy a little bit more, right? Playing about, $375 total this week. So, and rather than maxing out or doing a 20 entry max or something like that, I just like to kind of pick and choose that way, because you don't have to hit, the most perfect lineup in the world. Yeah, you're not going to win $1 million, but I'd sign up for taking down the Club Twirl every major championship, or every time I played it, right, for 20K. Like that's off, 300-400 bucks. I'll take that all day. All right. So let's close out with my outrights that I have here. Obviously, I got Bryson down at 10-1. My book opened him at 11-1, which is not great. Uh, I just bit the bullet at 10-1, and I'm glad I did because he's down to 6.5-1. He'll probably be down to 6-1 by the time the tournament tees off tomorrow, right? Some of my other mid-range guys. Let me scroll down here. I got a good number on Jordan Spieth. I got Jordan at 45-1. That's something that I'll take my stab on. And then I really played some more longer shots. Um, I got some top 10 bets. I got Wyndham Clark to top 10. I got Justin Rose to top 10. I did put an outright on Tyrrell Hatton at 55-1, Cam Smith at 100-1, Mav McNeely at 100-1, Min Woo at 90-1, Sam Burns at 125-1, Sung Jae at 90-1. Sung Jae again. I had doubled down on Sung Jae again at 90-1. Pendrith 175-1. Again, a bomber. If he can get after it, great. I'll be happy with him. And then I got the Spieth one there. So that's kind of where I'm going from a betting perspective. It's really just Bryson down low. And then my next lowest outright is going to be Tyrrell Hatton at 50-1. So that's kind of, who I'm liking this week. To recap, probably my favorite guys, like I said, Scotty with the ownership that he's at. I really like that. It's hard to look away from Rory. I'll probably get a little bit of Rory, but you got to make a stand. I would rather play Justin Thomas for about $2,100 cheaper than Rory, just personally. Morikawa. I like Xander from the top end of things quite a bit. Neiman is going to be a play for me. I think I'll have some Hideki for sure. Again, the concern, I just need him to get hot with the putter. If he doesn't, that's going to be a disaster. Shane Lowry, really nice form across the board. That's one of those guys where he doesn't hit it long off the tee, but does everything else really well, right? Does make a lot of bogeys. Really good tee degree game overall, right? Nice ball striking numbers, decent around the green, really good with the approach. And the approach game, again, guys, I can't understate how important that's going to be this week. Again, Hatton, obviously, I like. Minwoo is a guy that I'm going to click on this week. I think Wyndham Clark is interesting. His approach game has been horrendous. It's not going to be a big play. The more and more I look at Cameron Smith, again, that's not a guy who hits it far off the tee, right? But his around the green game and his scrambling and his putting, I think can lend him to being a very nice DraftKings play this week. I think it's probably going to be, Dustin won the PGA Championship here at 4 under in 2016. I think the course is going to play a lot harder than in 2016. Equipment, skill level today is probably a lot better. I would probably put the winning score in that like -3 to -5 range. I think it's going to be pretty close to that. Patrick Reed, again, just plays these hard courses really well. Justin Rose, I think, is a nice play there. Mav McNeely, I'm going to have a little bit of. Again, just a huge bomber. Does everything else okay, but at 7,800 and sub 8% ownership, I'll sign up for that. Siwoo Kim, I really want to click Dustin Johnson, but I just don't think that I can. Probably just going to be a pass for me this week. Getting down into these cheaper guys, right? Aaron Rye is somebody I'm going to be on at 6,800. I think he's, overall had some good form this year. Like him, Andrew Novak has been playing really, really good golf at 6,600. He's teeing off in the morning tomorrow. Aaron Rye is one of those guys that's teeing off in the afternoon, so he's going to get the morning tee time on Friday, which the wind will be a little bit less. JJ Spawn is one of my lower guys. Matt McCarty and Bud Cauley, and then I'm going all the way down into the fives. I think EVR is probably my favorite guy in the fives. Eric Cole, his approach and ball striking, really good. Doesn't make a lot of bogeys. Pretty good putter, top 15 in the model here in putting over the last 24 rounds. I think he's going to be a guy at 5,700. I don't think he's getting owned enough. So that's kind of where I'm going. That's really it, guys. I hope that this was useful. Hope that everybody has a fantastic week. It's going to be a really fun tournament to watch. Really excited. Hope the it looks like the weather's going to be fine. I really don't enjoy watching big rain fests, right? But it's going to be really interesting to see how the course kind of shakes out, and how fast they get these greens and how much they pump on that sub air because, man, it's also going to be interesting to see the pin placements. Like last year in the US Open, they had a lot of the easier placements in the first round, and everyone kind of got off to a hot start and then kind of just evened out after that. So it'll be interesting. Again, um, could bring some rain. Extremely dry conditions would make the course extremely difficult and turn the greens basically into skating rinks. And but I don't think that's going to happen. We did have enough rain earlier this week where, the greens are going to be fast. Like I said, I think they're going to be rolling 14, 15 on the stimp meter. But yeah, putting is going to be big. Off the tee, accuracy is going to be big. And then accuracy with the irons, absolutely paramount. All right, everybody, good luck. Follow along. My Twitter handle is at JJ McIntosh. We'll be following along. Hopefully we get another nice sweat. It would certainly be fun and enjoy.